The light in the window. The story of a shoemaker who was far more than just a good workman. I met him first on a summer day in 1936. I had rushed into his ugly little shop to have the heels of my shoes repaired. It wasn't much of a job, so I waited while he did it. He greeted me with a cheerful smile.
"You're new in this neighborhood, aren't you?"
I said that I was. I had moved into a house at the end of the street only a week before.
"This is a fine neighborhood,"
he said.
"You'll be happy here."
I sat there with my shoes off, watching as he got ready to make the repairs. Sadly, he looked at the leather covering the heel. It was worn through, because I had failed to have the repair job done a month ago. I grew a little impatient, for I was rushing to meet a friend. "Please, hurry," I begged. A proud man. He looked at me over his spectacles.
"Now, lady, we won't be long. I want to do a good job."
He was silent a moment.
"You see, I have a tradition to live up to."
A tradition. In this ugly little shop, that was no different from so many other shoe repair shops on the side streets of New York. His tradition. He must have felt my surprise, for he smiled as he went on.
"Yes, lady, I inherited a tradition. My father and my grandfather were shoemakers in Italy, and they were the best. My father always told me, 'Son, do the best job on every shoe that comes into the shop, and be proud of your fine work. Do that always, and you'll have both happiness and money enough to live on.'"
As he handed me the finished shoes, he said,
"These will last a long time. I've used good leather."
I left in a hurry, because I was late and my friend would be waiting for me impatiently. But I had a warm and grateful feeling. On my way home, I passed the little shop again. There, he was still working. He saw me, and to my surprise, he waved and smiled. This was the beginning of our friendship. It was a friendship that came to mean more and more to me as time passed. Good friends. Every day as I passed his shop, we waved to each other in friendly greeting. At first, I went in only when I had repair work to be done. Then I found myself going in every few days, just to talk with him. He was a tall man, but bent from long years of work. His hair was gray and there wasn't much of it. His face was deeply lined. But I remember best his fine dark eyes, alive with kindness and humor. The happiest man. He was the happiest man I've ever known. Often, as he stood in his shop window, working at a pair of shoes, he sang in a high, clear Italian voice. The Italians in our neighborhood called him
La luce alla finestra.
the light in the window. Once, as we talked, he turned to wave to a man who was passing. Then, he said to me,
"There's a man I'd like to know. He's been passing here for years. I wish he would stop in some time, for he has a fine, honest face."
I did not tell him that I knew the man. But a week later the shoemaker told me.
"I was right about that man. He stopped in yesterday, and we had a fine talk. He is a good man."
I knew then that the honesty and goodness of this gentle shoemaker had warmed another heart as it had mine. He had broken through the shyness of a lonely man, and let the friendliness come out. Our neighborhood was full of children, and crowds of them came into his shop. They were always welcome. Often, he stopped his work to act as peacemaker, if they seemed about to fight. Poor workmen. One day, I came away from my house disappointed and angry, because of a poor job some painters had done for me. My friend waved to me as I went by, so I went into his shop for comfort. He let me go on talking angrily about the poor work and carelessness of present-day workmen. They had no pride in their work. I said. They didn't want to work. They just wanted to collect their money for doing nothing. Wise words. He agreed.
There's a lot of that kind around, but maybe we should not blame them. Maybe their fathers had no pride in their work. That's hard on a boy. It keeps him from learning something that is important.
What can be done about it? I asked. He waited a minute before answering, then looked at me seriously.
There is only one way. Every man or woman who hasn't inherited a prideful tradition must start building one. In this country, our freedom lets each of us make his own contribution. We must make it a good contribution. No matter what sort of work a man does, if he gives it his best each day, he's starting a tradition for his children to live up to. And he is making lots of happiness for himself.
The light goes out. I went to Europe for a few months. Shortly after my return, I walked down the street, looking forward eagerly to the shoemaker's surprise. When he saw me, there was no light in the window. The door was closed. There was a little sign. Call for shoes at shop next door. I went into the next shop, full of fear.
Yes, the old man suddenly had got sick 2 weeks ago, right there in his window. He had died a few days later. We sure miss him around here.
The shopman said.
He was so happy all the time.
I went away with a heavy heart. I would miss him too. But he had left me something, an important piece of wisdom I shall always remember.
If you have inherited a prideful tradition, you must carry it on. If you haven't, then start building one now.